Hey guys, Buffett Game back today, beginning our video for our weapon conversion series, and today we're going to be covering the FARA 83 or the FAA 81, which is an Argentinian assault rifle produced in the early 1980s and the early 1990s. Never really saw mass production, however, you will notice it is modeled after a weapon that we're all very familiar with from the Black Ops series. So we'll go ahead and cover this weapon, not 100% a conversion, but we're going to go more into the inspection of the weapon and the stats behind it. And we'll get into some more real-life information about the weapon with some gameplay in the background for some of the best setups, I think, in the game. So let's go ahead and back out now, and we'll take a look at the weapon itself here being the FARA 83 or the FAA 81. Here on screen you can see the final version of the weapon. So let's go ahead and back out, and what we'll do is remove all of the attachments for this weapon. We'll start with the base FARA 83 or the FAA 81, standing for Argentine Automatic Rifle. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. First off, for the optic, now again, this is really personal preference. It does have pretty decent iron sights, but I'm going to go ahead and put an Elcan or a Vision Tech 2 times on there. Again, personal preference. I think it might be better off with a 1.5 times type red dot option on there, but we'll go ahead and put this on there, mainly for aesthetic purpose. You can see it's going to have that, if I go ahead and remove that quick, it's going to use a side rail mount, similar to what we see with the AKs and some of the Galils. So we'll go ahead and select that. You can see that side rail mount. I'm not really 100% certain if that's, I believe that's actually how it was in real life with that rail mount on the side. You can see that makeshift Picatinny rail. Not sure if there was actually Picatinnies. I believe it probably wasn't mounted on a Picatinny, but regardless, that's what they decided to do in game there, is mount that similar to like an AK with the side mounted optics with the dovetail mount. So the muzzle device, we'll go ahead and skip out for the barrel. We're going to go ahead and do the 17.5-inch contour barrel. So again, this is really for the real-life purposes of the weapon. The barrel length in real life for the FARA 83 is 17.8 inches. So this is really as close as we're going to get is a 17.5. Or you could also do the 18.1, which will give you better effective damage range. Both look aesthetically pretty similar. However, 17.5 is the one we're going to go with. Better strafe speed. Bullet velocity is going to be hindered, though. So you may want to go ahead with a Liberator for better bullet velocity or a Takedown for effective damage range. So we'll go ahead and do the 17.5 for the purposes of the video. Body, we'll go ahead and do a Tiger Team Spotlight. Again, this is one of those things we're taking liberties with. I'm not really sure what this is mounted on, but again, it's on there somehow. So we'll go ahead and do it. It's a nice tan flashlight for this weapon, though, which I do like the look of it. This will give you a reveal distance of 40% increase with the cons being the sprint to fire. We'll select that. Then for the underbarrel attachment, you'll see in the gameplay, I'll start off with the infiltrator grip for better movement speed and everything. However, for a 5.56 rifle in game, specifically for Cold War multiplayer, this thing kicks pretty high and hard to the up and to the right, pretty heavily, about a 1 or 2 o'clock type recoil pattern. So a very odd recoil pattern, and kind of hard to control. So I swapped out, halfway through the gameplay, you'll see I swapped out the infiltrator for the Spetsnaz grip. And that's going to help out with that vertical and horizontal recoil control. And that'll really make this weapon more controllable in my mind. So we'll go ahead and select that. I would recommend the Spetsnaz grip. And you'll see I'll inspect it and redo the fire testing for the recoil patterns in game. And you'll notice a big difference, especially with the engagements. I'm having a really, really hard time controlling it with the infiltrator grip versus when we switch. It's much easier. So magazine, again, this is really a standard. It almost looks to be a Stenag mag. However, these weapons in real life used it was more of a proprietary 30-round magazine from Beretta, I believe. So these are proprietary specifically for this weapon, not Stenag mags, even though they fire the same 5.56 by 45 millimeter. However, we're going to go ahead and just for the purpose of the video, we're going to throw on a 40-round magazine just to have the extra ammo. So again, magazine ammo capacity, max starting ammo, and the ammo capacity overall. Reload quickness, because we're carrying those extra 10 rounds in the mag. Handle, we'll go ahead and skip, as well as a stock. We're going to use only 5 attachments here. So here you can see the final design for the weapon. Now, one thing I mentioned, it looks very similar to the IMI Galil, the Israeli assault rifle, which is seen in other previous Black Ops Cold War games, or Black Ops games in general, Black Ops, dating back to Black Ops 1, I believe, is when the Galil was introduced as well. We just saw it recently in Black Ops 4 as well. Now, this weapon in real life, the FAR 83, is really heavily inspired after that weapon. However, there are some key differences. So one thing you'll notice in real life, I'm not sure if there was, I don't believe there was ambidextrous fire controls on the weapon. There may have been. However, you can see the fire control there on the left and right hand side right above the pistol grip. and that'll allow you to control the recoil, or excuse me, not the recoil, the fire select from full auto, semi to safe, versus on a Galil, IMI Galil, the fire control selector switch there is on the right-hand side, right above the trigger guard, the exact same one as the AK. They basically, IMI, the Israelis, reverse engineered an AK and made a 7.62x51 as well as a 5.56x45 version for their own liking. So they really reused a lot of parts and design patterns from the Kalashnikov rifles. So one of the main differences is that the Galil will have the same select fire switch as the Kalashnikov rifles on the right-hand side there above the trigger guard. And here with these, the FARA 83 or the FAA 81, they're utilizing the select fire switch above the pistol guard, similar to the AR-15, M16 type rifles from the Americas. So again, that's really the main differences with this. Barrel, everything like that is very, very similar. The base stock option is really the one we see here is the same stock that comes with the FARA 83 in real life, or the FAA 81. Not anything crazy with this weapon. No conversion is available for attachments, unfortunately. You really are kind of stuck with this particular build. Not that impressed with it in Cold War, however, in Warzone it seems to handle a little bit better. But let's go ahead now. I'll put on the gameplay in the background. But first off, let's check out the different camouflages on this weapon. And you can see something like, something like this. If I select that, we'll back out and preview it again. Okay, I guess it doesn't want me to preview it. But again, you can see what it looks like there. It looks pretty cool with the camouflage on there. However, we're just going to run standard black in the video. We'll jump into the gameplay here. And again, you can see the recoil pattern for this weapon right off the bat. When I'm using, I believe it was the Infiltrator foregrip there, it kicks really, really hard and up to the right. Very, very hard to control. I found myself having a lot of difficulty with it. However, when you put on the Spetsnaz grip later on, it was much easier to control, get shots on target. Pretty fast rate of fire for this weapon in game. But first off, let's go to some real stats while you show the gameplay in the background. We'll go to some real stats of this rifle. And again, in real life, place of origin is Argentina. And really, this program kicked off in the early 1980s. More so specifically, around 1981 is when these were beginning to be produced. And really what this was a program to replace the FNFAL, which was they had a licensed version for Argentina, specifically called the FMAP FAL, which was, again, their own Argentina licensed FNFAL builds. The prototype for this particular weapon was completed in 1981, given it that the first name I said for the prototype being the FAA 81, and then later on the FARA 83. So the prototype was completed in 81, but production eventually started in 1984, or the end of 83, for the purposes of this game taking place in multiplayer from 83-84. And then production was actually halted. The country went through a lot of government changes with different presidents, different financial crises, so they actually shut down a lot of the weapons programs that were being put in place, and production wouldn't pick up until later in the early 1990s. So I believe 1990, 1991, this picked up again. And the weapon really only saw under 1,200 total units built in total. So around 1,100 to almost 2,000 units in total were built for this weapon for the FARA 83. The Argentinian military at the time still really utilized their version, their licensed version of the FN FAL, while the FARA 83 was more of a secondary weapon that was utilized much more rarely seen within the military ranks of Argentina. Again, the weapon itself is heavily inspired out of the Israeli IMI Galil. Includes a lot of the same features like the folding buttstock, the titanium iron sights to see in bad visibility or low visibility conditions, as well as a very similar proprietary magazine that we saw for the 30-round magazine from Beretta there. Now, again, in real life, it's been in service since 1983 through present. As we said, production halted for some years and picked up later in the early 1990s. The manufacturer is FMAPDM, so the same manufacturer that had their own licensed version of the FNFAL. Number of units built in total was 1,193. However, that number is kind of still a gray area. They're not really sure, but again, it was very low. Not many were ever produced, nor did production pick up much more after the early 1990s. Now, the mass overall for this weapon is going to be 8.71 pounds. The length is going to be 39.4 inches with a barrel length in real life of 17.8, which is why we're going with the 17.5-inch barrel here in the gameplay. Cartridge again is 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO. Again, same version or the same cartridge that one of the versions of the Galil takes. The action is a gas operated rotating bolt. Same we've seen with a lot of things. The rate of fire is 750 rounds per minute in real life, with the muzzle velocity being 980 meters per second or 3,215 feet per second, with an effective damage range of 123 meters or 135 yards. And then the feed system is just going to be that standard 30-round box magazine. I don't believe there was really anything outside of that ever available. However, here in game we have up to, I believe, a 50 and a 60 round in Warzone. And that's really it for this weapon. Again, it's heavily inspired by the Galil. It looks very similar to some of the more modernized Galils out before the A series took over, such as the IMI Galil SAR, which was the carbine version of it, which is mainly really replaced all the wooden parts for the weapon. So, looks very similar to a lot of those. Very nice weapon in real life. However, like I said, it saw very little production overall. Now, just some information about the weapon in general in game is that there's a lot of attachments on this weapon that I just feel are oversights or kind of lazy development. Now, I don't want to call developers lazy. However, the attachments on this, you'll notice we're using a Spetsnaz grip here halfway through. There's no such thing as Spetsnaz are not Argentinian. Spetsnaz are elite Russian forces. There shouldn't be any Spetsnaz grips or anything available on an Argentinian weapon. So we have a Spetsnaz grip and a Spetsnaz speed grip, which is available on this weapon. We also have, for the buttstocks of the FARA 83, it comes with there's a KGB skeleton stock for the buttstock, which again, KGB is basically Russian CIA during the Soviet Union, which was nothing to do with Argentina. And then there's also, for the barrel options, there's an 18.7-inch Spetsnaz RPK barrel. And the RPK is a 7.62 by 39 millimeter light machine gun produced by the Russians. Again, it has nothing to do with an Argentinian-made FARA 83 or an FAA 81. So, naming conditions like this, again, this is just another example of where the gunsmithing in modern warfare is head and shoulders above that of Cold War. Just lazy things like this where they can't even name the attachments correctly. Now, obviously, developers have a lot more important things to worry about, but you know, it's the details in modern warfare that made it so addicting to sit in the gunsmith and do these things. And when I see things like an RPK barrel available on a prototype version of a FARA 83, it's kind of disappointing. In KGB buttstocks, it's a little bit ridiculous to have these on almost all the weapons in Cold War. Just, again, lazy development in some regard. They could at least rename them or make them look semi-differently with different naming conventions from all the other weapons. So, now that I have that off my chest, again, pretty cool weapon. However, a big missed opportunity to not have a Galil-type handguard on this thing, or a conversion to a 7.62 by 39 or 7.62 by 31 caliber for this weapon. We don't have any real weapon conversions for converting any calibers or converting it into a different weapon in this game. You can aesthetically make different weapons, however, converting them in general doesn't work in this game, Cold War. So big missed opportunity here. They could have had a different caliber available. They could have had different handguards similar to the Galil to turn it into the Galil SAR, which is a carbine variant. A lot of things they could have done, but they didn't do it. Instead, they chose to put RPK Russian machine gun barrels on an assault rifle from Argentina, which, again, makes zero sense whatsoever. So, take that however you want. But, again, interesting weapon. I think the recoil, I've used it a little bit in Warzone when I picked it up. Recoil is much, much less in Warzone, obviously, for some reason. I don't know why that is. But I'll be covering this eventually for a Warzone video when I do pick it up and level this thing up and get some more trigger time on it. But let me know down below what you guys think of this. Is it good in Cold War? Have you used it in multiplayer? Have you used it in Warzone? Have you leveled it up? What are your favorite attachments for this weapon? And how do you like to run it? Gonna leave you guys with that. Until next time, this is Buffner Gaming with the prototype version of the FARA 83 with the FAA 81, which, again, it even says FAA on the side of the weapon with the caliber 5.56 by 45 NATO, which is pretty interesting. It's stamped right there on the left-hand side. FAA. So this is an FAA 81, really a prototype version of FARA 83. Till next time, this is Buffner Gaming. Out.